Does anyone else feel like the financial finish line isn't just moving, it's actually sprinting away from us? You know the feeling. You finally get that promotion. You finally hit that savings number that you wrote down 5 years ago. You pat yourself on the back. You walk into the real estate market to look for a starter home, or you walk into a grocery store to buy a carton of eggs, and you get hit with a cold, hard realization. You are actually further behind today than you were when you started. We are staring down the barrel of 2026, and I have some bad news that we need to address immediately. The definition of rich has completely changed. The goalposts haven't just moved, they've been ripped out of the ground and installed in a different stadium entirely. I've spent the last week crunching the projected numbers from the Federal Reserve, analyzing inflation trends, and looking at the latest wealth distribution data. And I'm going to be honest with you. Millionaire status? That is the old benchmark. That is so 2019. In the economy of 2026, having $1 million net worth doesn't mean you're flying private. It means you might be able to retire comfortably if you don't live in a major city. Today, we are going to look at the exact net worth you need to crack the top 10%, top 5%, and the ultra-exclusive top 1% in 2026. But we aren't just going to look at the numbers. We are going to break down the lifestyle at each level, the strategies used to get there, and the massive, dangerous gap between looking rich on Instagram and actually being wealthy. Before we get to the scary wealth numbers, we have to delete a massive misconception from your brain. This is the mistake that keeps 90% of people broke even when they make good money. Income is not wealth. I need you to internalize that. Income is how much water flows through the pipe. Wealth is how much water stays in the bucket. And heading into 2026, we are seeing a massive rise in a demographic that economists call Henrys. H-E-N-R-Y. High earner, not rich yet. These are people, maybe you're one of them, who have the six-figure salary, they have the senior manager title, they have the lease on the luxury SUV, but they have absolutely no assets. To be in the top 1% of income earners in 2026, projections suggest your household needs to bring in roughly $650,000 to $800,000 a year. That sounds insane, right? That is a staggering amount of cash flow. But to crack the top 10% of income earners, you only need about $200,000. Now, here's the trap. You can make $200,000 a year in 2026. You can wear a Rolex. You can eat at the nicest steakhouses. But if you live in New York, San Francisco, or Miami, and you have 2 kids in private school, a massive mortgage, and 2 car payments, your actual net worth could be 0 or negative. You are exactly 1 layoff, 1 medical emergency, or 1 bad economic quarter away from total disaster. That isn't rich. That is just premium broke. You have a first-class ticket on a sinking ship. Real wealth is net worth. It is the calculation of assets minus liabilities. It is the money that works for you while you are sleeping, eating, or playing video games. So let's stop looking at your paycheck and start looking at your balance sheet. Let's look at the benchmarks. Let's start with the baseline, the top 50%. The true middle. By 2026, the projected median net worth in the United States is hovering around $195,000 to $200,000. Now, on paper, if you have $200,000 to your name, congratulations. You are doing better than half of the entire population. You are winning the game compared to the average. But let's be real about what $200,000 actually looks like in 2026. For the vast majority of people in this bracket, that $200,000 isn't cash in the bank. It isn't stocks that you can sell to buy groceries. It is almost entirely tied up in home equity. It's the imaginary value of your house that you can't touch unless you sell it and move somewhere cheaper. If you strip out home equity, the median liquid net worth, the cash and investments people can actually use, drops drastically. Being in the top 50% in 2026 means you're likely driving a Honda Civic. You're worried about the price of gas, and you're terrified of your water heater breaking because you don't have the cash to fix it. This tier is the rat race. You are running as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. Now, let's make the jump. Let's leave the average behind and see what it takes to be upper class. To enter the top 10% of households by net worth in 2026, you need a net worth of approximately $2.2 million. This number shocks people. A decade ago, $1 million put you in this conversation. Now you need double that just to get through the door. Who are these people? This is what I call the comfort class. And here's the irony. You wouldn't even notice them. The top 10% in 2026 aren't the influencers flexing stacks of cash on TikTok. They're usually the boring neighbor down the street. They're the 55-year-old accountant or the small business owner who has been consistently investing for 30 years. At $2.2 million, your life looks like this. You have a paid-off house. You have zero credit card debt. You drive a nice car, but maybe it's a Toyota Highlander or a Ford F-150, and you drive it for 8 years. But the biggest difference at this level isn't what you buy, it's how you sleep. The top 10% sleep like babies. Why? Because they have a fortress of solitude around their finances. If the economy crashes, they're fine. If they lose their job, they're fine. They have built enough assets that they're not dependent on the next paycheck to survive. But they still have to work. $2.2 million is a lot of money, but if you stop working at age 45 with $2.2 million, you have to be very careful. You can't fly first class everywhere. You can't buy a vacation home in Aspen. You are comfortable, you are secure, but you are not yet free. Let's crank up the difficulty. Let's look at the top 5%. To join this club in 2026, projections indicate you're looking at a net worth of roughly $3.8 to $4 million. This is a massive psychological shift from the top 10%. At $4 million, the math changes completely. Let's use the 4% rule, a standard rule of thumb for investment income. If you have $4 million invested, you can safely withdraw $160,000 every single year without ever touching the principal. Think about that. You could sit on your couch, do absolutely nothing, and make $160,000 a year in passive income. That is double the average American salary for doing zero work. This is what I call the freedom line. At the top 5% level, work becomes optional. You don't work because you have to pay the mortgage. You work because you're bored, or because you like the mission, or because you want to build more. The lifestyle here is different. These families take the nice vacations, the European river cruises, the weeks in Hawaii. They pay for their kids' college in cash. They have high-quality health care and eat organic food without looking at the price tag. But here's the secret of the top 5%. They are heavily invested in assets. They own real estate. They own large stock portfolios. They might own a share of a successful small business. They understand that to get to $4 million, you cannot just save your salary. You cannot budget your way to $4 million by skipping lattes. You have to own things that grow. And then we arrive at the number everyone obsesses over. The gold standard, the top 1%. In 2026, to be in the top 1% of U.S. households, projections place the threshold at a staggering $12.5 to $13 million. I want you to pause and really look at that number. The difference between the top 10%, $2.2 million, and the top 1%, $13 million, is roughly $11 million. The gap between the rich and the super rich is larger than the gap between the poor and the rich. This is a different stratosphere. The top 1% isn't playing the same game as the rest of us. They're not trying to find a high-yield savings account for their emergency fund. They are operating like institutions. How do you get to $13 million? You generally cannot do this with a W-2 salary, even a high one. You don't get here by being a doctor or a lawyer, unless you're the doctor who owns the practice or the lawyer who made partner and invested aggressively in real estate for 30 years. The top 1% are business owners. They are investors who use leverage. They use OPM, other people's money. They have decoupled their time from their money completely. When a top 1% individual wakes up in the morning, their assets have likely appreciated by $5,000 or $10,000 while they were sleeping. They're buying businesses. They're leveraging complex tax codes that regular TurboTax users don't even know exist. They're thinking about generational wealth, money that will last for their grandkids, not just their retirement. At this level, money stops being a tool for survival and starts being a tool for power and influence. Just for fun, because I know you're curious, what about the top 0.1%, the Roy family from Succession level? In 2026, that number is projected to be over $40 million. I bring this up only to show you that there is always a bigger fish. The guy with 13 million feels poor compared to the guy with 40 million. The guy with 40 million feels poor compared to the billionaire. If you play the comparison game, you will lose every single time. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're listening to these numbers, 2 million, 4 million, 13 million, and you probably feel a mix of depression and anxiety. It feels impossible. It feels like the system is rigged. And you're right. The system is difficult, but here's the secret that the wealth data doesn't show you. This is the twist. You don't need to be in the top 1% to feel rich. Let me give you a tale of two people. Person A is a corporate executive in New York City. He makes $600,000 a year. He is technically a top 1% earner, but he has a $3 million mortgage. He has an ex-wife and alimony payments. He has 2 luxury cars on leases. He has to wear $2,000 suits to fit in. He works 80 hours a week. He hates his boss. He has high blood pressure. If he stops working for 3 months, his entire life collapses. Is he rich? The data says yes. Reality says no. He's a servant to his lifestyle. Person B is a graphic designer living in a lower cost area. She makes $90,000 a year, but she has no debt. She invested consistently in index funds since she was 22. She has a net worth of $1.5 million. Her house is paid off. She works 30 hours a week because she enjoys it. She spends her weekends hiking and painting. The data says she is barely scratching the middle class compared to the executive, but who is wealthier? Person B is, because person B has autonomy. In 2026, rich isn't just a number in a bank account. It is the ability to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. So, how do we bridge the gap? If you are in the top 50% and you want to get to the top 10%, what do you actually do? You have to stop focusing on the $1 million goal and focus on the gap. The gap is the difference between your income and your expenses. That is it. That is the whole game. Most people get a raise and they immediately increase their lifestyle to match it. That is the lifestyle creep trap. To climb tiers, you have to artificially suppress your lifestyle while expanding your income. If you're in the top 50%, roughly $0 to $200,000, your goal is defense. You need to kill high-interest debt. You need an emergency fund. You need to stop bleeding money on things that don't matter. If you're pushing for the top 10%, roughly $200,000 to $2 million, your goal is offense. You need to max out tax-advantaged accounts like 401ks and IRAs. You need to buy S&P 500 index funds and just wait. You need to let time do the heavy lifting. This is the boring middle. It's unsexy, but it works. If you want the top 1%, anything over $10 million, your goal is ownership. You cannot save your way here. You need equity. You need to start a business, buy real estate, or have significant equity compensation in a growing company. You need to take calculated risks. The world in 2026 is going to be expensive. Inflation isn't going away. The dollar isn't going to suddenly buy more. But you have a choice. You can chase the arbitrary numbers. You can make yourself miserable trying to hit 13 million because a YouTube video told you that's the benchmark. Or you can find your freedom number. Maybe your freedom number is 1.5 million. Maybe it's 3 million. It's the number where you never have to say yes to a boss you hate ever again. It's the number where you own your time. So, I have a question for you. Which ladder are you climbing? The income ladder, where you just try to look rich, or the wealth ladder, where you're actually buying your freedom? Let me know in the comments below. What is your freedom number for 2026? What does rich look like to you?